So anyway, this is episode 1 for me, podcast wise.
Nice.
And thank you for coming over
absolutely.
and chatting with me about health and fitness and wellness and all that fun stuff that we've been involved in for most of our lives.
Most of our lives, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is just get a good background for everybody. As to where you grew up, how you got involved in health and fitness, and all of that.
Okay. So for me, from New York City, born and raised, born in the Bronx. I think that's one of the things that we connected on because we both East Coast, right?
Yeah, man, we were right across the bridge is what separated us.
But yeah, grew up in the Bronx. Single mom. So I think when I look back to when I have these conversations of how do I end up where I'm at now with philosophy and stuff, I had very simple surroundings, right? It was super simple. Grew up in the projects.
Yeah.
So my thing was basketball growing up because all I needed was a ball, right? And some concrete. Right? And easy. No membership fees, no so
totally.
super easy. And that was kind of my taste into fitness and activity. It was that was my outlet. So let's see, I'm 45. So going back to
up there.
Yeah. So born in 77, so through the 80s, our generation, our activity was parents kicked you out the house during the day.
Oh yeah.
Right? And you
totally.
were you had one rule, you had a couple boundaries, right? Either stay within eyesight or don't cross the train tracks, right? Or don't go past the street.
Oh yeah, totally.
And when the lights come on, you're back in the house, right? So I was always active, riding my bike all over the city. So that's kind of what got my engine going with activity. There wasn't really a dedicated training regimen back when I was growing up, because for me, I look back on it, I think I had a poor attitude around sports teams, high school teams, stuff like that, because I didn't want to practice. I just wanted to play. So I didn't really join any teams other than bowling. I was the captain of my bowling team. Right?
Bowling. That is such an odd sport for a guy growing up.
Yeah.
I mean, we did bowling, but we were it was a birthday parties, stuff like that. No one knew how to bowl. We were just kind of messing
so
around.
Growing up, with blue collar, right? And I grew up. The bowling alley was within walking distance, maybe a 5-minute walk through the projects across the street. But it was a way to keep you from out of trouble. Yeah. And then on weekends or whatever, my mom was a nurse, emergency room nurse all her life. All her friends were either nurses, bus drivers, some sort of blue collar civil type job.
Yeah.
So it was back then that was you could do that job and retire and be comfortable. So it was good. It was fine back then. But the activities also was bowling was $1 or 75 cents a game, right? So they could go. They could get their drink on. They can throw their bowling balls.
Yeah, kids It was affordable for everybody.
Kids were in a confined space. Everyone knew everybody. So it just ended up being this thing that was part of our family tradition. I just picked it up and it actually got pretty good. I'm a 220 average.
How old were you around this time?
Probably 10 years old, 11. So
220 with a 10?
No. Now 220. My first game was a 0. I was not allowed to use bumpers or guardrails. She was if you want to bowl, you got to learn how to bowl.
Learn how to bowl.
The object is not to throw a gutter, so don't do that, right? So I learned quick. But yeah, so bowling was my thing, and also with her being emergency room nurse, it was the likelihood of getting hurt. Bowling was low. Right. She put me in football for a little bit. I wanted to play football for a little bit, and then I think I blew my ankle up or something like that. And then her desire to support that was well, now I gotta take you to my hospital to get so she didn't want me to get hurt.
Right.
She didn't really push that. And football wasn't her thing either. So we did baseball, we did basketball, but anyway, so grew up, did that. I think when I got into went to Catholic school, all boy Catholic school. Shout out to Mount St. Michael. Little drop. But it was a great experience. I wouldn't necessarily repeat it for any of my children when I have them, the single sex school. We can talk about that in a different piece. But I think I started to get into fitness when it came to the like probably my teens, I think, right? When like back when the hormones hit, and like back then in New York, it was like jeans, Timbs, and a wife beater. Right, little tank top. So like you're just trying to like. So you want to look kind of jacked. Yeah, you just want. So all that meant was like bench press and pull ups, right? Like squats didn't even exist. Didn't even exist. Right. Yeah. So like this is kind of like that was like my taste into it. Like I was always the one doing pull ups on the back of the basketball hoop or whatever, or at the corner, right? Like doing push ups everywhere. And I think around this time too, my brother, who's 15 years older than me, he was in the Marines. And he was, so 15 going, I was like 15, so he's 30. So like a 30-year-old Marine is like top shape, right? Yeah. Like that, they're hitting their prime. Depends on when they got in, but for the most part, like he was like a specimen of like, oh, okay, I want to do that. And I thought,
what year did he go in?
He went in, let's see, I was like 3 years old, 2 years old. So 80. In the 80s.
So
early 80s.
Yeah, because I went in 86. So he must have went in
He went like 1 year or half a year of college, and that shit didn't fly. And my mom
did he go to Grenada? Or
he went as far as like boot camp and shit.
No, because they were having a police action down there.
No, it was like right after. It was like right after that.
Okay,
so got it. His tours were like Japan and shit like that.
Right. Okay. Now we're on that.
Yeah, he did all that type of stuff. But like, so born and raised in New York, but my family roots are in South Carolina. So every summer I would go back to South Carolina and stay with my grandmother while my mother was finishing nursing school, kind of like retracing steps a little bit. So he would always come hang out in the summer with the family reunion, all that kind of stuff, and he would always keep his workouts going. And then he'd be like waking up at when the roosters crow and start going on his runs. And I thought, I was like, yo, I want to do this. Like, he's like, all right, you sure you can come, but you got to keep up.
Sweet. That's inspirational.
But then, he would just like totally dust me and crush me. And like, he'd like leave me out in the field somewhere. And like, my mom would be like, where's your brother? He's like, oh, he'll be here like in 20 minutes. Like, he's coming, like, or whatever. Right. But like, it'd be like, run 2 miles, get to the park, do some pull-ups, do some push-ups.
Like CrossFit type stuff.
And then run back home, right? Yeah, exactly. Like, so that was also like the eye-opener is like, okay, like, I like this. Like, I like this effort, this like working towards something. I like the feeling, the endorphins, whatever it was. I didn't know at the time. I didn't know what it was. I was 18. I wasn't really looking at it from like studying what's actually happening. I just know, like,
just experience.
I like it. I like this feeling. I like the way it makes me look. I like the feeling. I like the confidence. All that good stuff. So that was kind of the stepping stone. And then as I went into my 20s, it was like meathead, go to the gym, 3 sets of bench press, 3 pull-ups, lat pull down, some leg extensions maybe, right? But like it was still more in the bodybuilding world, right? And then, but now I was like also in my circle of friends, the one that was like leading the fitness mindset. Like all my friends were athletes, like all of them were athletes, but most of them were like athletes when they're playing, but then like it wasn't like the off season they were training. Like I was always working out, right? So it's like I started to pull some of them into the workouts, and they started to make their games better, and I started to become like my crew's resource on fitness, right? And then it was just kind of led me into like doing more research and looking things up and like buying all the different fitness magazines, right? And looking at the workouts in them and like doing them, right? Cutting them out, like doing all that kind of stuff. And like then it's just got the itch going. And then from there it went into CrossFit. Like there was like a couple of years, like a long period of that, but like in the late 2000s, 2008, I found CrossFit.
Yeah, you had a gym though.
At 2009.
Right. So you had your own gym.
Yeah.
Then, so you never really were influenced with the party culture then.
That's funny you mentioned that because I was a party promoter for a little bit. But it was I promoted parties in my mid-20s and did that little side hustle too, just because that's kind of what we did, right? Like if you knew a lot of people, you might not host a party, right? Like, and it's also like that's what my mom would do. She had her little groups, I don't know what they were called, but like she had community social clubs, right, that she was part of, and they'd have functions, and she had to sell tickets, and I was always around and seeing it, and it was kind of just woven. It was woven into like just kind of like what I knew. So I did promote parties for a little bit, but I was never a partier. Different.
It's a big difference. It's like you were like, I like the social aspect of all this, but I'm not gonna lose control of my life,
give or take a night or two, there was
not day in and day out.
Right? And I think and it's funny you kind of touch on that. It's because I also think I developed a really good awareness of like boundaries, of like not going off the deep end, of like, because like one of my philosophies I always go back to is like an 80-20 rule. Like if you can be locked in 80% of the time, you can do whatever you want the 20% of the time.
It's the best rule there is.
Like if you can just be like 8 out of the 10 things I'm gonna do are gonna be fucking spot on. But then 20% I can do whatever I want. And people always like, I'll eat cookies for breakfast some days, right? Like whatever, like, but it's like, because I don't do that, I do it like once every 45 days, right?
You're not doing it every day.
Exactly. So it's just, people don't understand. It's not an all or nothing thing. It's a consistency thing.
So you started developing that lifestyle early on, and then so when did you go from the East Coast to the West Coast? Because that was a big jump.
It was 2006, 2007, and it was, so at the time I was an operations manager for a cosmetic company. So I've done a lot of things, right? But one of those things always involved from my mom, like tremendous work ethic. Like, so I started at this cosmetic company just to kind of, I'll bring it all together in 2 seconds, but like, as just picking orders in the warehouse, just like, get a sheet, order, pick it, put it in a box, wrap it up, put it on a pallet, get ready to pick it up by UPS or whatever, right? Started out doing that, and then just one of my good friends was already working there. He was in a different position, a little higher up, and he was like, yo, the manager here sucks. Like, I think if you come in, it was on, like, we conspired. We knew he was an ass, and we knew he was lazy. So it wasn't like we set him up or framed him for something, but we just like, I'm going to get in here and outwork you. Right? And then it's just going to show. And we're like, we don't need two of you, and they're going to keep me. I'm younger and whatever. Anyway, so that actually worked out literally like we scripted. I think within a year, I was the warehouse manager, and then we became operations manager. It was a small family business, and like with the good work ethic and their tutelage, like small family business, very astute businessmen and women. The mom was super keen. It was a father, son, and the mom, right? And they taught me a lot about business. And they treated me great, paid me great, and then the bubble burst in like 2008, and then everything started to fall apart, right? They had a lot of investments and things, and they needed to cut back. Looked at my salary and was like, we could, like, we love you, but it's business. Right?
We'll see you later.
But they gave me a severance package that allowed me to be like 6 months, almost 8 months of enough money to live.
Nice.
And at that point, I was already, because I had been there almost 8 years already with this company, and I was already starting to look for like what's next. Right. I was like, I love these guys. It was the father, son, and the mom. They didn't have a daughter. I couldn't marry into the family. Like, I was already kind of like, I had maxed out. Like, I was the director of operations. There was no one higher in the company than me. So I was like, where am I really going to go?
No upward mobility.
It's like, where am I really going to go? Like, and I just had that hustle mindset. Like, I always want something more. So I started looking at opening a car wash or a gym. I was always working out, like I said, we talked about. And I had just started doing CrossFit on my own. And I was like, a car wash is cool. Like, it was gonna be like a car wash / barbershop salon for dudes, right? I was like, that sounds like a great idea. But it was like, there was no passion to it. It was just about getting paid, right? It was just about making money, which is like good, but it was, at the end of the day, it was like, is there something more?
It's not an extension of who you are.
And the gym piece just really started to like call to me. Right. So I started doing more research, more homework, got deeper into CrossFit, and started to realize that I think I can do this, right? And so went and got certified. And then once I got certified, I met a dude in Bloomfield. I was living in Bloomfield. Where was his gym at? Gorilla Fitness. Great dude. Greg, we happened to be flying to our level 1 seminar on the same plane. We didn't know each other at the time. Flying to go to Santa Cruz, California. We were on the same plane. I saw him reading his manual, CrossFit journal, and I was like, okay. I didn't say anything, you know, creeper style. Like, okay, I see you. Got to the seminar, then we connected naturally, and just found out that we were both in the same town. I was looking at opening a gym. He had already signed a lease and had a space.
Jeez, wow, serendipity.
And so then I was like, he was like, yo, I'm just getting started. I don't really know what I'm doing, but you know, if I get to a point where I need some help, I'll hit you up. And I was like, cool. If I get to a point where, and this is back when it was very collaborative, like 2007, 2008.
Yeah, it's when
like,
I got
no one knew anything, right? It was like we're all like trying to learn from each other and just trying to help.
I mean,
people,
I think I got my affiliate license in the summer of 2007.
Okay, yeah, probably same around the very similar time frames. So ended up meeting this dude. Fast forward a couple months, I hit him up or he hit me up, whatever the case may be, and I ended up basically instead of me opening up and being a competitor, like in the same couple square miles of his gym, I was like, look, like you don't gotta pay me. I'll just show up. We'll work out we'll help build Gorilla Fitness for you together. Right. For me, this is an intern. Like again, I had a severance package. And like I've always been never a greedy. Like I'm always like trying to figure out how can we build each other up and help each other out, and the shit will always work out at the end. That's kind of like just my philosophy. So it's like, you don't gotta pay me. I'll show up. We'll coach. I'll learn because I don't know what I'm doing. So this is an unpaid internship for me on your dime, basically. Right? Like you've paid for all the equipment. You're paying the lease. Like it's way more of a risk for you than it is for me. Instead of me opening up and taking the same risk, and now we got 2 gyms in the same area, and we both don't know anything. Right. So we combine powers, and after 6 months, man, like I felt like him and I had figured, and Gorilla Fitness was like ramping up and getting going, and we were like, okay, I think I can do this now. We said, cool, appreciate it. And that's when I said, where now do I open a gym? Yeah. It was like, I was living in New Jersey, so I was like, New York and New Jersey, for me, not the spot. So I was like, I want a place where people are 24/7 fitness. Yeah. And my brother lived in California. He had retired from the Marines at this point. So I was like, yo, let me come out there. And he was like, cool. And I was like, sweet. And so being 15 years apart, like we had obviously we're brothers. We're always like, there's always going to be a deep connection. But like now is like really special because we got to like actually be men together, right? Nice. Because we were like, when he was 30, I was 15, right? Yeah, like so it was always like,
and he had to be really proud of you because of how it turned out.
And then he was moving into becoming an Orange County sheriff. Nice. So it was great to have me around because then it'd be helping him stay fit, stay aware, right? And it's kind of like, again, the stars just really aligned. Like he had a network of people. So I moved out there and started training his ex-wife's company out of the back of my truck. Right. So I used the money that I had to like get a stockpile of equipment, and I would load up my truck and drive to different people. And this company had like 15 people, and it was like rocking it. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'd be there, and it was like a mobile gym at the time. Yeah. So but that's what brought me out in 2007, 2008. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. And then you And then through that, you built your gym up, and then you got into Legendary Competitor, which was a fun ride, which was amazing because that's how you and I met. Mm-hmm. So tell me a bit about how you got into that.
Yeah, so that was 2010. So now I'm in CrossFit,
right?
And I got a gym. It's successful, right? I think I had 130 members, and it was working. Everything was good. And then a friend of mine in California put on a CrossFit competition. It was what was the name of it? I don't know, OC. I think it was OC Throwdown. Right. This is before all of the shit went down with OC Throwdown. Yeah, right. This is the very first one. We're not gonna go into all of that.
Yeah, no, that's a train wreck.
Yeah. But the first one created a spark, right? Because it was just after 2007, 2008 CrossFit Games had started up in the ranch, and that got this whole truly the sport of fitness kicked off, right? It was always talked about as the sport of fitness, and then when they had the CrossFit Games, that truly made it the sport of fitness. And then this OC Throwdown was the first one that I was aware of to actually bring it to the masses, to the regular people, the regular person, right? Where you didn't have to qualify and be elite. You could be, had different levels, and I went. And what I noticed as a gym owner, it gave me something to promote to my gym as here's our target, right? Because I'm an athlete, right? Here's our game day that we're training for, right? Not because without having that thing you're training for, it's easy to lose focus. It's hard to it's easy to hit snooze instead of just getting up and going to the gym if you don't really have
and plus the CrossFit Games were they were just once a year.
Exactly.
And so people were looking for more of that type of competition. Because I remember when we won the games in 2009, our gym won the CrossFit Games 2009. It was at that point I was thinking, oh my God, this is the wild, wild west. Mm-hmm. But what an opportunity to get into the sport of fitness, and get these things going. So that's when I got into WOD time, and I was doing the scoring system that we had built and all that, and we had reached out to you, and you were running this league, and we were that's what we need to do. We need to be the scoring for all these leagues,
Yeah.
And so that back then it was something that was so special and unique. And anybody who can get something off the ground with any sort of reputation and keep the reputation intact, just because everybody was they were so opinionated about how everyone was doing. I mean, you got a million know-it-alls, all converging into the sport, and there's no real true.
I think that's one of my strengths, at least, is I don't get caught up in the emotional pieces of it.
Yeah, the political
I'm
side.
Very
you're pretty.
A lot of people just call me smoke or switz. I'm just very
neutral. Yeah,
I'm neutral. I'll tell you how I feel. I like it. I don't like it. But just because I don't I don't play the politics of things really well. Or, I just
you were very, very apolitical.
Straightforward. This is what we're gonna do. If you don't like it, you do not have to do it. I'm not forced. I'm not coming to you forcing you to give me your money.
Yeah,
It's fine. If you don't like how I'm doing it, then don't pay for registration. Simple.
Perfect.
Right. But I would also recognize when someone did have a good idea, I'd be like, oh shit, I didn't think of that. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Yep. I will make that better, right? I think if you can understand what's your non-negotiables and then where you have room to grow, that's the combination for a good, successful, growing business. But Legendary Competitor started because of that one event. I asked him, are you going to be doing this again? And he was like, I'm just going to do it once a year. I was like, well, that doesn't help. Same as it's just once a year. Right. So then I put on one, rented out this high school, El Toro High School, and that was the first one. I think we broke even, or I think I maybe lost some money, obviously. But it was, people were coming up saying man, I've never been an athlete. That was my first time ever competing. This was amazing, right? And then I was able to get pretty much so many participants that were because Southern California was like the mecca of CrossFit athletes at the time.
God,
right? It was the home of it.
I mean, absolutely, 100%.
So I had all of pretty much had all of the female top 10 competing in our events.
Yeah, right.
That helped give it validity, right? And it was also helping them stay ready for the CrossFit Games, right? So I started out doing one. I think I did one, and then I waited 3 months, did another one, and then I said, okay, that was 2 this year. Next year I did 4, and the third year I got it to be every other month. So I was doing one of these competitions every other month with like 400 spectators, 400 athletes, a couple thousand spectators at different venues. But my philosophy was like, I wanted to get CrossFit out of the box.
Yeah.
Right. So box is just like what we call a gym, right?
Right. Yeah.
And in the metaphorical stance too, like where even though as you say it's CrossFit, but it's like everything you do is a barbell. Then you're not doing it's not CrossFit at that point, right?
That's right.
So I was like taking them to like track and fields, putting them people on the field, running the track, throwing footballs. Like doing like crawling, doing obstacle courses.
Sweet.
As like now tell me how fit you are. I don't care if you can just clean
right.
and do pull-ups.
Yeah,
like,
you were doing like real athletic type of stuff.
Like can you run a 5, 10, 15 drill, right? And then throw a football how far, and then repeat that drill, right? Like athletic type stuff. And that was what I think was the draw for some people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you had the purists I would get emails like, this ain't CrossFit. Right. What kind of programming is this? And I was like, again, dude, you don't have to show up. You don't have to participate if you don't want to do it. It's fine. But it's also telling me where your weaknesses are if you're avoiding.
That's that. Right. So it's a number one. It's like it is actually the number one variable in CrossFit is to not have any variability. Everything needs to be variable.
You just need to have like 70. You just need to be good at 70% of it. 70% at all things is like a good athlete. Awesome. in CrossFit.
Walk me through like what happened with Legendary Competitor and how we ended up meeting during the during your Legendary Competitor time and somehow or another things kind of worked out to where you were looking for a change. I needed someone desperately to come help me with my businesses, and so just from your perspective, walk me through that period of time and what led you up to Seattle.
Yeah, so Legendary Competitor grew to be 6 events a year. Like I said, had a pretty decent following, and it was outside the box, right? And then I also added in a powerlifting. Specific powerlifting events under the Legendary Competitor umbrella. So we had the functional fitness competitions, then I had powerlifting competitions, and I also added weightlifting competitions, right? So now we had this 3-pronged attack because it was within CrossFit, right? Like everyone didn't want to just run, suck, and die, right? Like we had people that just wanted to move heavy weights but still do CrossFit as well. So I created the powerlifting for them. You have people that... one of the beauties of CrossFit is it introduced a lot of regular people to some very different modalities they would have never just went out and experienced.
That's right.
Weightlifting, powerlifting, gymnastics, right? They wouldn't... the average person wouldn't have gone out and sought it out.
Totally.
So
100%.
I added all this stuff in, and it was doing great. And this is now 2013, 2014, but there's always a peak.
That's right.
And there's always always a peak.
Well, Orange Theory.
Right. And I think what happened was through the success that CrossFit and other competitions were having, gym owners wanted to just do it on their own and do it in their box, and it was a lot lower cost, and it was a lot quicker turnaround, right? A little lower risk. So there just became a lot more competition. Yeah. And after building it up for like the 4 years, it just got a lot harder to get sponsors, to get competitors, to find time in the calendar that wasn't like saturated with other events.
Yeah. Plus, CrossFit was just blowing up You know, like corporate was just blowing up, and they started having more events as well. You know, and then there was some offshoots of that. You know, like there was the was it Grid? What was it?
That was it was Grid,
and
League,
and then the Grid League, and then I but I think that what was happening, at least from my perspective during that time, was, you know, people were just getting fatigued by the whole CrossFit deal. Like it kind of like you said, it was like a big, you know, 7-year sort of like trajectory straight up as far as high as you can go. But then it just sort of like started to kind of flounder a bit, you know. And I think,
well, you only can go like from the metaphor of that, you only can go so hard for so long, right?
Yeah,
and you just burned everybody out.
Yeah, just burned everyone. That's exactly right.
If you got in it early, you were burnt out after 7
man,
years.
I mean,
right? If you didn't learn how to adapt and modify it, or whatever the case may be.
And I kind of kicked myself in the butt because there was a time when I felt like I lost my love for CrossFit. I think it was just because of the injuries I had gotten, and it was just one of those things where I was like, you know what, I want to try something new. I want to do some new things, you know, and so. But anyway, that's where we kind of started. Our trajectory kind of hit around that time period.
So it got to the point where it was just it didn't make financial sense, I think, for me to like invest at the level, because at this point I was doing events that were like, the overhead was ridiculous because I was trying to make it an event, not just a meet up and throw barbells around. Right. Like it was an event where we had like different pits going, we had music, we had different vendors, we had activities for spectators, right? You had games, you had clowns making balloons for kids, right? It was just an event. But all of that costs money, and like, if I'm going to invest in doing it at this large scale, and then I have my man over here, which again, don't fault him, he's doing his thing for his business and his people, doing an event that is local to the community for them, super easy, low overhead, and they pull 100 people away. It's not a massive event for them, but take 100 people away from an event that has a huge overhead that I needed 500, now I only got 300. It's a big difference.
That's right. That's right.
Big difference. Right. So it was got to the point where I was like, okay, that was great, that was amazing, loved it, but now what? Because I think for me it also ties into a philosophy of how can I help more people. When I opened the gym, it was a solo gym, reached a couple hundred people. The events started to reach a couple thousand people.
That's right.
Right, and I was helping like lead the direction and how these people were training, right? Because they were gearing up for the events that we were putting on. So it got to a point where like, okay, this was great, but like now what's next? And then we had already made a good connection.
That's right.
And then you brought me up. He was like, hey, come up to Seattle. I think it was like July or August, the most beautiful time of the year in any part of the world. It's like, come check out Seattle and see if you like it. And I was like, cool, I'll come up. And then I think that was, I got up here and we rode the motorcycles around Bainbridge or whatever the case may be. And I was like, this is the life. Yeah, sign me up. Right. And then 3 months later, it like rains every day.
I know, right? Totally. So, you know, when you came up to Seattle, you know, we spent a few years, you know, working together and stuff like that. You did, you know, amazing job and all of that. And you know, and then of course the gyms, you know, they kind of shut down and we were kind of closing down some of the gyms, and you went and got a position at Amazon. And so tell me, if that was like 2018, right?
That was, what year is this? 23? Yeah, 2018.
Okay, so tell me about what you're doing with Amazon and how that is sort of like your...
Yeah, I can tell you. I tell you what I'm able to say because some.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, probably, you know, probably some people from Amazon are gonna hear this. They're gonna listen to this, you know. So we gotta make sure that we're compliant with all of your non-disclosure agreement stuff.
I won't give away the house, but yeah. So basically, I was extremely blessed, lucky, however you want to frame it, to have one of our members that was coming to Northwest CrossFit already be at Amazon, and she recruited me in to help with a project. And it was like a computer vision, like a visual assessment type deal, of like, can a trainer visually do X, Y, and Z, right? And I was like, I don't know. But she gave me a little like survey, did it, and fast forward, she came back a few months later and was like, that thing that you did the test on is going forward. Hey, you want to be a contractor with Amazon? And I was like, great. And basically it's like training computer vision, which is using a camera to detect like movement. Right. So this was super different. Like it was taking like, for the past 10 years now, I've been in the gym, and this was like taking me back to a corporate type experience, sitting behind a desk, looking at a computer. So I was a little hesitant, but I was a contractor, so I was like, I can stop whenever I want, work as much as I want. So it was a good deal. Right. But the deeper I got into it, the more I really started to enjoy it, because one, the more I looked at it, I'm able to be like this mediator between the real world coach and the scientists and engineers that are working on training an algorithm, right?
Yeah, which is like so important, man, because you're bringing some realism into it. Yeah. You know.
So it's been a great ride. I've been there 5 years now, and we started out doing things around body fat and like body fat percentage, which was like, that was all right. But then we got into movement, and that's where I think I'm a lot more interested in. Right. And now I'm also on the content side, where we actually, like most fitness apps, you have fitness content, right? Peloton, everybody has fitness content. So I'm able to kind of shape our approach to the content that we're putting out, like being able to make sure that, determine what trainers we use, like what they're saying, how they're moving, still letting them be a coach in their own right, but just making sure that maintaining a certain quality bar, right? And I'm also tied into training the algorithm how to recognize different movements, which is, again, like I've learned so much in the past 5 years from a science and engineering type standpoint, where if I was just in the gym as a coach, I wouldn't have that knowledge. I still have I miss coaching a little bit. I just started coaching again at my capoeira school, but now I'm able to basically create another language.
I see.
Right, like this language and logic that's able to, you can just use your phone and have a personal trainer in a sense, right? Like in working towards building that, and there's a lot of bumps in the road. You got to figure things out. There's some high pressure deadlines sometimes, right? You always hear that Amazon kind of works you to death. I don't feel that, but it's definitely like trying to build something from scratch. It's hard, right? Like you gotta you gotta put the time in. You gotta really see all of the steps and cross all the T's and dot all the I's and be very, very,
very system oriented.
Very system oriented, but it's a good experience. I think I'll be there for a little bit. As long as the product launches successfully, I'll be there. If it doesn't, no one's gonna be there.
Right. So let's go into some more deeper stuff. Just because as a world-class coach that you are, your insights are valuable, I think, to a lot of people that may be interested in just wanting to get some deeper ideas about certain things. So let's talk a bit about coaching specifically. When you are thinking about coaching others, what do you do to help them with inspiration? Like how do you go about inspiring people that you're working with?
I think the biggest thing for me is start right. You hear this all the time. Meet them where they're at, right? Like start them where they're at. If you try to, and I've always had this thought of like, I just want 1% more than where you are right now, right? Because my biggest thing for me is instilling a consistency mindset. Right. And unless you are an athlete and you have a set date you need to be ready by, different. That's not the majority of the population, right? Like, so let's get that aside. For most people, you just are training so that way you wake up tomorrow and you can do the things that you want to do and you enjoy doing. That's generally, and you look good. Let's not forget that. I think people get in this space of they almost put like looking good. If that's your goal to look good, it's like a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's fucking everybody.
No, it could be quite motivational. It could build self-esteem.
Most people,
it could be good for communication. I mean, it could be good for relationship building, meeting people for the first time. Everyone, I think, they misinterpret the motivation to look good as being narcissistic versus no, it's just a healthy vanity. It's a healthy level of vanity because
it's confidence.
I mean, you put makeup on to look really good. You comb your hair to look good. You make sure that you're groomed really well to look good. You wear nice clothes to wear look good. So it's just another extension of that. I look at it.
So I think meeting them where they're at and keeping it super simple and building in a routine. Like those are kind of like the places I always start with. Like we're going to do the same thing or very similar things over and over and over until it almost unlocks something in you or something in them that allows them to explore the edges of that thing. If it's a push-up, per se, right? Like we're gonna do this pressing motion a lot. And the more you get comfortable doing that, then it starts to unlock like, okay, well, what if I put my hands here? What if I do that with my leg? What if I do this with my upper body? Like, then you start to play around, because this is kind of like my philosophy, is more movement driven than like exercise driven. Right? Like if you can there's certain movements, the umbrella, exercise is one pillar, very strong pillar underneath it in our current day and age, because we sit on our ass most of the day, and so we put exercise as this big thing that we need to go do. When it used to just be move your butt all day, do some work, right? That's your fitness, right? But that's kind of like my philosophy is like just keep it simple, find a routine that you can do consistently. That's where we start, and I think that's what gets people going. But I try to keep it as simple as possible.
And then you've kind of switched a little bit away from the hardcore fitness. Like a lot of people don't realize just your background in Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, straight up strength conditioning, and CrossFit, and all the the extreme versions of fitness. Like now
ultra
marathons. And so now you're in capoeira, right? And so tell me more about your experience in capoeira. What brought you to capoeira and what?
That is, I can talk about capoeira. So I've been doing capoeira now only for 3 years. Like I'm definitely base level student, right? Still learning, but with what I noticed immediately was just the wealth of the depth of movement capabilities. So I also have a boxing background. Like I boxed a lot when I was growing up. Like that was one of the other outlets that me and my crew, we always were in a gym, pads, hitting bags, slap boxing, right? Play fight. Like that's just what we did growing up. So like it's also like if you didn't have hand skills in New York City, you're kind of fucked.
You have to learn how to fight.
You gotta know how to throw the joints.
I was telling people like when I started learning Taekwondo, it was like no, I was a fighter before I became a Taekwondo athlete. Whereas a lot of guys become Taekwondo athletes, and then I've got to teach them how to become fighters.
So that was like, I've always had a love for martial arts, right? And so this was 2000, so 3 years ago. So 2019, right before the world went to shit. I was talking to a really good friend of mine. We're at a sauna in Seattle, Bonnier 5. Love that place. Love him. And we were just sitting there talking. He's a Wim Hof instructor, so I do breathing. So we were connecting.
Nice.
And I was just telling him that I'm at this transition point, right? Where I've done CrossFit. I did the functional bodybuilding. I did like the ultra marathon thing.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I want something new. I want something else now. And it was December, so I was like, okay, what's my goals? Like, what do I want to achieve for next year? So it was also.
This is like pre-COVID.
This is right before
the shit
COVID, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's December or November, and he's like, "Have you ever tried capoeira?" And I was like, "Nah." Like I knew what it was. I've seen it, and I was like, "No." He's like, he owned a store downtown. He's like, "I got a loft above the store that me and a couple guys we practice." Or whatever, come through. I'll show you some stuff. I was like, cool. I went. Literally, I think we were practicing maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours. But like halfway through, like I got the jitters. Like just from the movement combinations, the things he was telling me to focus on. We're on barefoot wooden floors. His floor fucking had nails and shit in it. Like so, it's like a lot of stimulus overload.
Yeah.
And then practicing the movement solo and then actually being in front of someone that's trying to kick you in the face and you still trying to keep your flow. Like I was like, wow, like I've never had this sensory overload this way. Right. I love and I've always been a kind of a chaser of like what really exposes a weakness. I go towards it. Like it's just kind of one of those things. So I was like, okay, I'll be back tomorrow, right? And it was like I wasn't, you know me, I'm fit, but I'm not very flexible. I wasn't very flexible.
You're pretty like super strong, like
athletic, but not flexible.
You had like this really incredible, unassuming strength, like almost 600 pound. Did you do a 600-pound deadlift?
No, it was like 530, 540, but close enough.
Pretty close, man. But for basically you're a thinner guy, tall, thinner. It's strange to see someone who can lift that much weight, and move that much weight around. And then you would go and do 50-mile, ultra marathons and deadlift almost 600 pounds. And then you would do all these CrossFit type things, and you're jacked as hell. And then there's going into capoeira. It's like. It's like a completely different.
And then also, so biggest thing about capoeira that people must understand, it's a martial art first, regardless of like what it looks like to the untrained eye of like choreographed movements. Right. It's very
it's
flowy.
Intentional.
It's always been a martial art. Like so. Quick history, it's an Afro-Brazilian martial art. So when the slaves were dropped in Brazil, they were all from different tribes, right? So you get these once warriors, strong, independent people now have to be slaves. Most of them, it's human nature, you just submit. Like if you don't see an outlet, you're like, fuck it, all right, this is my new life. I hate it, but fuck it.
Right.
But then you had people that were like, no, fuck that. Like, we're going to resist and we're going to overcome. And now you have people that don't necessarily speak the same languages, but movement is a universal language.
Yeah, right.
And totally. Martial arts is a universal language. Yeah. So they started to learn how to defend themselves using what is now known as capoeira, but they had to do it in a way that was a little bit hidden and secretive to the slave masters and everyone else. So hence why it looks like it's
disguised as a dance.
It's very ceremonial, right? Where you have people playing music because this is their outlet as well. Like so, they're telling their histories and their struggles and their frustrations through song, right? And this camaraderie. So they're all called like comrades, right? And then you had two players in the middle playing capoeira. So you don't fight capoeira, you play capoeira, and these kicks and these moves they can be very flowy, but like so as a beginner, and say I'm a beginner, you're advanced, you're gonna throw a kick at my head, but you're just gonna throw it slower. So I know how to move out the way.
Right.
Now, you get two higher level capoeiristas playing back and back, the game speeds up. The kicks they're coming right at your head, but the reason it feels like it's very choreographed is because you've been doing this all your life. Like, the idea is not to block.
Right.
Right? Like, the idea is just not to be there.
Right.
Like, so I can still throw my kick, and and if we're trying to train each other to fight back against oppressors, if I just throw a kick that's like way over your head, you never learn how to duck.
Right.
So the kicks are intentional, but the other participant is also very aware of what's coming, and he moves out the way. And instead of it being a very choppy sport,
right,
my escape, or what we call esquiva, flows right into something else. Right. And so that way I was here, but now I can escape, roll, move, and now I'm behind you. Like it makes you have to move. So everything is this very spiral circle, and always trying to change angles and set you up. Like it's a game of disguise, a game of trickery.
So which that's what martial arts is.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what boxing is. I mean, my whole purpose of boxing is to set you up. So I'm disguising.
You run into my fist.
I mean, like people don't realize. I used to say that in Taekwondo. I'm like, no. If you always show the other person what you're doing, they're gonna just be able to defend against it. But the whole purpose is to disguise, and you want to be like a master magician. When you're setting people up. And let them think you're gonna do one thing, but you're really setting them up because you're gonna hit them with something else.
Yeah, this is definitely like it's something with also the Brazilian martial arts, right? Jiu-jitsu is just like this always evolving in the moment chess match, physical chess match that you're always like looking to be here, but I'm gonna be here now because I'm gonna be over there later, right? And vice versa. So it was, and capoeira is magic to me. So then there's the element of, I said, the music, you have the movement, and then you have the rhythm of the game. So like it's always driven by the music. And even if you're not playing capoeira, you're part of the experience. You're part of the energy exchange. So you have the bateria where the musicians are sitting. They have like three main instruments that they're either playing, and then you have people standing around in a circle, which you call the roda. And then you have the two players, right? So there's like three elements, right? And then the bateria is leading this song that's call and response. Right? So they'll say a couple lines, and then the people in the roda will give their offering, right? And that exchange creates an energy. And if you ever have a chance to experience it, if you get goosebumps when the energy is right. So then you got the music bumping, right? And then the people in the roda are clapping to a certain rhythm.
Yeah, we used to have a capoeira program in our Taekwondo school. It was Seth Martinez. He was Rhoda something. I can't remember the name of it, but it was wonderful because they would take over the Saturday afternoons after it was like this is pre-CrossFit, when we had the Taekwondo over there. So we would do Taekwondo, and all of a sudden all the capoeira guys would come in and they started doing all of their their stuff, and they were amazing. They're amazing.
Yeah, so you get the energy of the roda and the people pouring in to the two players that are playing, and then their energy pours out. So you have this energy exchange, which is just, I guess, again, magical.
And it's like what I found really amazing about capoeira was just that it was like such a non-judgment zone. It was like everybody was just accepted for where they were at. They were respected for where they were at. And
it's funny you mentioned that, because as like that's 1,000% true. There's very little external judgment.
That's right.
Right. But you always feel like I'll speak for myself and I'll speak for anybody else. I always walk in with this I'm not gonna be able to do this. Like there's a very much of a exposing of your a very vulnerable art. It's a very vulnerable art.
Oh yeah, I mean you're putting yourself all out there.
Because there's so many elements to it. The inversions, the acrobatics, the flexibility, and then the technicalness of throwing a kick correctly. Right? Learning how to block, the footwork, right? There's so many technical aspects that get overlooked when you look at high level capoeiristas. It just looks like this magical dance. But the technicalities are phenomenal, like, and drilling those over and over and over again, like, you're always, every class you're exposed to something. And I struggle with that, like, going from, like, you know, a long 12-hour day of, like, work to then go to class and then be exposed more to some shit like so it's a very humbling.
They're acrobatic. They're gymnasts. I mean,
very humbling.
They're doing, you know, backflips. I mean, they're doing, you know, front flips. You know, cartwheels. You know, like you know, and so it's super. I could see it being very humbling for a lot of people. You know,
but it's also I was kind of already going down the road of movement before I found capoeira, but I think this is what kind of led me to ask, like, what am I going to do next? And just like the stars aligned and brought me capoeira to like further peel away some layers. Yeah. But like now that capoeira is my art that I'm going after and I want to be as proficient as I can, it's really driven like how I train. Right, and so it's most of my stuff is movement driven, and I use strength. I do strength movements that support what I need to be doing in the Roda. Right, like I just have gathered so many tools into my toolbox now. Right. For me, like I rarely like write down what I'm gonna do when I go to the gym. I usually just show up with like today's lower body. Cool, got it. All right. Then I get in the gym, I start my warm up, and I just go with the flow. Yeah. I'll do a couple sets of this, couple sets of that, few reps of this, few reps of that.
Just like, feeling it out.
Just feeling it out. But I'm getting volume. I'm seeing what feels good. Like I'm a much of a what feels good to me these days. Right. Back versus CrossFit. Like, and then be like, no, I gotta do this, but it's like I hear my fucking back crunching. Like I'm still doing it. It's like why? And then I wake up and I can't move the next day. It's like it makes no sense.
Totally.
Now it's like I do movements for purpose. I did them back then for purpose, but it was kind of also like I just did what was on the paper back then, regardless of what the outcome was. Right. Kind of like we were talking about earlier, right? You did some deadlifts, trap bar deadlifts. You wanted to do it, and as soon as you finished, you was like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have done that." Right. It's like I'm just become a very much a student of my body, and like really like do movements that make my body feel good, but also challenged. I think there's a fine line as you need to learn. I wouldn't necessarily have a beginner just walk into the gym and say do whatever you want, right? Like, that's where I said you need structure, you need routine, to then start to explore the edges.
Yeah, I mean you need to plant the seed and you need to flower it, until it blossoms up. But then once it becomes a tree,
just let it
then
grow.
You're like, go grow your branches. Go do what you gotta do. It's fascinating, when we find ourselves in our bodies and we find ourselves in the present moment and we find ourselves enjoying the space that we're occupying, and we're loving our experience. And to me, that's what's missing in the fitness world. Like the conventional fitness world was missing a big part. Even like to some extent with CrossFit, it was missing the spiritual side. And to me, it's all about mind, body, spirit. And when I say spirit, I say it's having faith in yourself and having faith in the unknown. And the unknown is the future. The unknown is your past. The unknown is what people are thinking about you. Mm-hmm. The unknown is things that are behind you. Like you can't see, you can't hear, you can't feel, you can't taste or touch it. So it's beyond our five senses. And I feel like in the fitness industry is so centered on mind, body, ego, and they push the ego side of it so hard. Even in CrossFit they did this, with the sport and the scoring and your hierarchy and how, like so your value was all based on your ranking and how good you were and all that kind of stuff. And in the martial arts, because my background was originally in Kung Fu, and then I got into karate, and then I got into Taekwondo, as you know, and I became a master in Taekwondo, and I studied different art forms, and it's always been the base of my philosophy throughout my entire life. It really encapsulated the way that I look at health and fitness. And so when I was looking into, when I created Morph method, Morph is it's about creating harmony between your mind, body, and spirit. And so for me, it's simply love yourself. And and then part of that love is 3 responsibilities that you have, to heal your body, to love your body for where it's at, and to protect your body from anything that could potentially hurt it in now or in the future. Right? And so that requires you to have a deep connection, I believe, with yourself, to realize what are the things that you're bringing into your life that could potentially be harming you. So for you, you had to have witnessed this transition, I would imagine, from the fitness side, which probably to you had already had some level of spiritual side to it, because you've always kind of grew up taking care of yourself and feeling like you had this love for yourself, that you wanted to take care of yourself. But then when you get into capoeira, you really you are in that spiritual side of it, and you're being led by that spiritual side of it. And so to me, lead me into your own philosophy about how you view the mind, body, spirit connection in health and fitness, and what your thoughts are about where you think that is now with the current industry, and where you may feel like if you could make changes, where would you make them?
I think, let's see. So with mind, body, and spirit, for me, the spirit is, you touched on it a little bit, but it's like internalizing it, right? Like having a connection with who you are, like what you like, what you doesn't like, what doesn't serve you is really kind of where I go now for like the spirit. I don't necessarily think of it from a religious standpoint, right? I've learned, like I grew up Christian, Baptist, like church every Sunday with my mom. Like that's what, like if I didn't, I was getting my butt kicked. It was like kind of like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. If I don't go to church, I get beat. No. Or I get punished. But I think from that exposure, definitely learned a lot about just a higher power. There is a roadmap. There are these tools that you can go to help you when you are mentally troubled, physically troubled, financially troubled. You have these resources, whether it be a Bible, a Quran, or whatever it may be. Here are some resources. And I think for me now, I'm learning that I can be that resource for myself, right? And how you do that is like taking time to like truly reflect on, like, because there's certain things you have no control over. Those are there. Put those aside. You have no control over those.
It's
things.
None of your business.
None of your business.
The things you have no control over are none of your business.
And then focus on the things that you can control. And for me, I love to take the time just to focus on my breathing. That's kind of like my go-to like reset button, is squaring. And I've learned like first time it starts off kind of like, if you look at like church, right? Like a lot of people would say the only time you pray is when you go to church, right? Like the only time you're like holy is when you're in church.
Right.
When you leave church, you're like running the streets, right? So with the breathing, it's like you don't have to set aside these like dedicated times. That's how I started, right? It was like, okay, I'm gonna sit here in the morning, do my 30 minutes of breathing, and that's when I'm connected, right? Well, that's a great entry point, but for me, is with the breathing is the one thing it can be voluntary or involuntary. So throughout the day now, I'm trying to find those moments of voluntary control and awareness of my breathing. Like I look at things like, where can you put more distance between the cause and the reaction?